Welcome back, NFL fans. Today we have the Week 6 recap around the NFL. We'll go through every game, some of the reactions, and some of the storylines, and some of the great endings we saw around the NFL this week. Saw a couple of overtime games. We had an awesome game with the Dallas Cowboys and New England Patriots. We saw a great overtime game with the Panthers and the Vikings. So we'll go over every game, talk about all the storylines once again, which teams are playoff bound and Super Bowl contenders, which ones are kind of out of the playoff race. The Miami Dolphins, for instance, may be in that situation there. So anyway, timestamps will be in the description for every game. Hopefully you guys enjoy, and let's get into it. So on Thursday Night Football, we had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course Tampa was favored by, I believe, 7 in this game. And if you pick Tampa -7 in this game, you're probably hating the outcome, and you probably hate Nick Sirianni because the Eagles were down 14 points. They scored a touchdown. They went down by 8 points. And instead of going for the extra point and making it a push, they went for 2 and made it a 6-point game. So those that took the Eagles +7, you won your bet. So congrats to those people. I picked the Buccaneers on my spread pick show. I was not happy about that outcome. But anyway, Jalen Hurts was just typical Jalen Hurts. He did not really show up in the first 3 quarters or so, had a lot of just bad incomplete passes and just making bad decisions. And then, of course, in the fourth quarter, like he always seems to do, he makes this incredible comeback. And, the Eagles defense couldn't get that last stop as the Buccaneers kind of went the length of the field. And there was a very questionable taunting call. I think it was Leonard Fournette and one of the linebackers on the Eagles. And it seemed like a typical exchange of guys that are in a competitive game of football, and they threw a flag on the Eagles linebackers. It was a very crappy call, in my opinion. Some of the taunting calls and the roughing the passer calls are so weak in the NFL. I really can't stand it. But anyway, so typical Jalen Hurts game, had 2 rushing touchdowns later in the game. Zach Ertz was traded to the Cardinals. This is kind of off topic, not really related to the game, but Zach Ertz caught a touchdown, and I saw that Zach Ertz is like 10 receptions shy of the Eagles franchise record, so I do feel for him in that regard. But the good news is he goes from a 2-4 team, I believe the Eagles are, to now a 6-0 team with the Arizona Cardinals. Now he has a chance to compete and maybe win his second Super Bowl because he was on that 2017 Eagles team, of course. Antonio Brown had a big game in this one. Quiet one for Mike Evans, a pretty quiet one for Chris Godwin, but Tom Brady did enough even with that hurt thumb. Now has 10 days to rest that. Leonard Fournette had a big game in this one, a couple rushing touchdowns, I believe. So the Buccaneers look good right now. They've won a ton of games this year. I believe they have 1 loss right now. The Eagles, of course, are in the midst of that rebuilding year, so it's kind of what you expect, and they still play in the crappy NFC East. Anything could happen, but not expecting much there. But Jalen Hurts has to kind of step it up here at some point because a lot of people are questioning if he can be a franchise quarterback going forward. Next, we have the second London game of the year. It was the Miami Dolphins at the Jacksonville Jaguars, just happened to be in London. And the Jaguars finally got their first win. So the Dolphins, who came into this year with all these expectations of being a playoff team and competing for the AFC East, and I think most people expected them to be second place. I think I had them in third place coming into this year. I did like the Patriots a bit more. We'll see how that plays out. I'm sure most people had Buffalo in first place, but the Dolphins were supposed to compete for a wild card spot this year. I mean, this is now year 3, I believe, of Brian Flores. It's year 2 of Tua Tagovailoa, who, yes, was out with a rib injury most of the season so far, but he came back this game, and Tua looked pretty good for the most part. Not a ton of deep ball passes. That's not really his thing. He had a couple to Mac Hollins, I believe, of all people. They had Preston Williams out. They had Devontae Parker out. And they had somebody else out that I forget now. I feel like they had another guy out. But anyway, so Tua played pretty well most of the game, but had a terrible throw, I believe, sometime in the early fourth quarter where he was staring down the same receiver and he threw flat-footed and threw an interception to a Jaguars corner that was playing underneath, and it was a terrible decision. So that was a game-changing play. And Jacksonville's offense, while they started out slow, they started to turn it on in the second half, and Marvin Jones had the big touchdown down the right sideline, a great play, great catch by him on the Is Noah Igbenogany a rookie? I forget. He might be a second-year player, but it was on the corner out of Auburn, Igbenogany. So, yeah, I mean, Marvin Jones had a great catch. Laviska Shenault made some plays. Of course, James Robinson had some nice runs in there as well. So, Trevor Lawrence, for the most part, showed why he's the first pick, making very athletic plays outside the pocket, showing off that rocket arm. So I think his receivers kind of hurt him at some points. Dan Arnold dropped the ball in the first quarter that could have been a touchdown, so that, of course, sucks for them. But the main storyline, of course, outside of Jacksonville winning their first game and Trevor Lawrence getting his first win in Urban Meyer, was their kicker, Matthew Wright. So coming into this game, this is week 6, of course. So in the Jaguars' first 5 games this year, they had 0 field goals. I don't know how you do that, but somehow they had 0 field goals. And Matthew Wright, a kicker I'd never heard of, came in this game and made 2 very clutch kicks of like 50-something yards on 2 separate occasions. One of them to tie the game, I believe, and one of them to win the game. Now, the one to tie the game was insane. It looked like he missed it for sure. The announcer even said nope because he thought he missed it. And somehow it was like a slider in baseball. It just curved back and got in between the right upright, right inside of it. So it was a crazy kick and honestly a very fun game. It came down to the wire right before the 1 o'clock game started. So awesome game there. Happy for Jacksonville to get their first win. And as for Miami, I mean, it's just been a very disappointing season so far. We'll see if they can turn things around, but I think their playoff hopes are probably over. Brian Flores, is he on the hot seat? We'll see how the year goes, the rest of the year. We'll see if guys play hard or if he loses the locker room. I think he's a pretty good coach for the most part, so I'll be surprised if he's gone, but anything can happen because he's not living up to expectations right now. So sucks for Miami, but I also feel good for Jacksonville at the same time. Next, we have a game that myself and I'm sure a lot of other people thought could have been the trap game of the week because it was the Cincinnati Bengals at the Detroit Lions, and Cincinnati was only favorites by 3.5 points. I don't know what it closed at, but it was 3.5 for most of the week, I remember. So I'm sure a lot of us saw that spread and were like, hey, the Bengals are a pretty good team, and the Lions are, of course, the last remaining winless team in the NFL. Yes, they've competed in some spots, but they're not on the Bengals level. So a lot of us were left wondering, why is the spread only 3.5? Well, the final score was 34-11 Cincinnati. So obviously, if you took the Bengals, you were off. You did pretty well there. So I saw the stat from Mike Clay on Twitter yesterday. Detroit has not taken an offensive snap while being in the lead so far this year, which is very hard to fathom. Like, I can't imagine having every single snap this year for an offense and not having the lead once. It's just very hard to fathom that, but that's kind of how bad Detroit has been. Now, Dan Campbell obviously is not afraid to speak his mind, and he took a very long pause in a post-game conference, and he basically came out and not like ripped on Jared Goff, but really was honest about Jared Goff and says, I need him to be better. I think the way he worded it was, he needs to step it up, I think is the way he said it. So you don't see a lot of head coaches or even offensive coordinators and whatnot call out their quarterback like that. But really, Dan Campbell just said, hey, Jared Goff got to step up. Like, we're not playing well as a team, but quarterback's got to play better. So, I mean, he kind of really, I guess, called out Jared Goff in a way. So we'll see if he responds from that. Jared Goff was not that great in this game, honestly. I think the one interception he had wasn't really his fault. I saw Logan Wilson had another interception. I think that's 4 for him on the year now. So that's really good for a linebacker, of course. He's having a nice year for the Bengals here in year number 2, I think it is. So Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense, they were clicking all game, really. 2 running backs had touchdown receptions. Chris Evans was one of them. I think it was like a 24, 25-yard reception. Evans was a guy I liked coming out of Michigan. He went late in the draft, didn't have much on tape, I guess I'll say, coming out of Michigan, but had that 3-down build type, of player and had all the skills to be an every down back. So I guess Cincinnati, in my opinion, got a pretty good one there. Their second running back, P. Ryan, was out on the COVID list. Joe Mixon was back. He played very well in this game, had a long touchdown reception on a play action pass, and I think Mixon made a guy miss and took it to the house like probably 55, 60 yards. So Joe Mixon was really good in this game. Jared Goff at under 5 yards per completion in this one, so it really wasn't that great for him. And Jamar Chase had like 97 yards, another good game for him. Didn't find the end zone, but a good game. So now the Bengals are 4-2. Don't know who saw that coming, but the Bengals are better than I expected this year, honestly. They now play Baltimore, a very big game for them, of course. The 5-1 Ravens versus the 4-2 Bengals here, an in-division game. So definitely a big game here in week number 7 coming up for both teams. And as for the Lions, they are now 0-6. 6, and now they go to LA to play against their former quarterback in Matthew Stafford. That should be a very interesting game. We'll see how great of a performance Matthew Stafford has versus that very beat up Lions secondary and defense in general. Next, we have a game that was also not very close. The Kansas City Chiefs were on the road at the Washington football team. The Chiefs won this one 31-13. I believe Washington was a plus 6.5, so it was expected to be much closer than this outcome. But the Chiefs, I mean, this game was pretty close midway through the second quarter. Even at halftime, I believe it was kind of a close game. And then all of a sudden, I think Demarcus Robinson had a touchdown, and I think Tyreek Hill had one at one point as well. And the Chiefs started to pull away. The backup running back who filled in for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams, had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. Not the most efficient game for him. I think he had 20 carries for 60-something yards. Not the most efficient game, but found the end zone twice. So the Chiefs offense got it going. Patrick Mahomes had 2 interceptions in the first half, but played much better in the second half, so maybe the Chiefs offense finally got it going. I believe the Chiefs do have some injuries. I think Joe Thuney was playing with a broken hand. I don't know how you do that as an offensive lineman, but I think he played in this game and I guess somehow lasted out there. Washington's offense was very disappointing, especially against the Chiefs' defense that was the worst in football coming into this game. Now, Washington's defense was not that great either, but the Chiefs' defense, I believe, was the worst in football heading into this week. Now, Taylor Heineke had a disappointing game. Antonio Gibson had a disappointing game. Terry McLaurin. Not a lot of guys on Washington's offense did anything. I think the only nice touchdown they had was Ricky Seals-Jones on a nice, well-designed play where they faked the screen and Seals-Jones acting like a blocker, then went out for a pass and he fooled the defense. But outside of that, Washington's offense really did nothing. I don't know how much they're missing Ryan Fitzpatrick or if this Washington team is just not that good. Obviously, their defense is not playing up to expectation. It's been the same thing for a while now. They have to be one of the worst defenses in football. And as for the Chiefs that have had such a terrible defense so far this year, it's good to see them have a nice performance and hold a team to 13 points. Yes, it's Washington. Yes, it's a backup quarterback. But at the same time, it is good to see that from their team. So I guess the Chiefs, maybe this is a win for them that can get them on track. We'll see how it goes the rest of the way, but definitely a big win for them. They get back to 500 now, 3-3, and Washington falls to 2-4. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. They were at the Carolina Panthers, a game that looked like with a few minutes left was over, and Carolina made a game out of it. Of course, Carolina came in having won their first 3. They lost their last 2. Needed a win here, and Christian McCaffrey, of course, went on IR. They have not won without McCaffrey yet. Now, Dalvin Cook came back for the Vikings, and their offense was amazing in this game. Somehow, they only put up 34 points, despite having 571 total yards of offense, which is unheard of. So, the Vikings offensively had an insane game, whether it was Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins. I think Jefferson had a decent game. KJ Osborne. I forget if I said Adam Thielen or not, but he had a big game in this one. So a lot of guys on the Vikings offense played out of this world on Sunday. But the way this game came down was, I think there was a 50-yard missed field goal from Greg Joseph, who is the Vikings kicker. And then all of a sudden, the Panthers were down 8 points and had 98 yards to go. So 98 yards to go, down 8 points. Of course, you need a touchdown. You need 98 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion to go to overtime. And somehow they made it happen. I mean, it was a pretty crazy drive. So they were still deep in their own territory. It was a 4th and 10. Sam Darnold found Ian Thomas, the tight end on the Panthers, for a 40-yard gain. Then later, it was another 4th down play. Right after DJ Moore dropped a simple slant pass, he went back to DJ Moore for a 25-yard gain on 4th down. They get a touchdown. I forget how they scored now, but the Panthers got a touchdown later in that drive, and they got the 2-point conversion as well on a really cool play. We see it with the Chiefs all the time, that shovel pass to the tight end, I believe. So it was a really cool play there by the Panthers. They get this game to overtime. Unfortunately for them, though, they came up short because the Vikings, they won the coin toss. They got the ball. They drove down the field, and KJ Osborne had a 25, 30-yard touchdown to win it right at the left pylon there. And KJ Osborne was on top of the stands and had a selfie stick. I don't know, a lot of crazy stuff was going on, but the Vikings got themselves that overtime victory. So I feel like Minnesota has played in a lot of close games this year, whether it was week 1 when they played Cincinnati in overtime. They played a close game in week 2 against Arizona, I believe, that came down to the final field goal. Of course, they missed it. They had this game as well. So Minnesota's been in some very close games, obviously. So happy to see them get the win. Sam Darnold has not been himself really after the first 3 games. I don't know if it's just McCaffrey being out or what, but maybe teams are figuring out this offense as well. Could be a combination of all those things, honestly, but Sam Darnold has not been as sharp. Now, in Sam Darnold's defense, the Panthers dropped a lot of passes in this game. I think they dropped like 6, 7, 8 passes. At the entire receiving core dropped a ton of passes from Darnold, so I'll give him some credit there at least. Like it wasn't all his fault, but did not have the best game, honestly. Talked about Osborne. The Panthers beat themselves in so many ways, and it was nice to see Kirk Cousins bounce back. It was nice to see Dalvin Cook back and healthy. So maybe the Vikings make a push here. We'll find out. I believe they're 3-3 now. I'm pretty sure. So both teams are now 3-3 after this game. The Panthers luckily get the Giants after this game, so that's very winnable for them. I forget who Minnesota plays, but both teams are now 500. This was a very good game, and Minnesota found a way to hold on despite blowing the 8-point lead in the final minutes. Next, we have the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. It was going to be interesting to see how the Colts bounced back from that very depressing Monday night loss last week against the Ravens, and they bounced back in a very big way here. The Colts won this one 31-3 at home, so definitely took care of business very easily. Carson Wentz was not asked to do much in this game. I think he had 20 total pass attempts, but had a couple of really nice throws. One of them was to Paris Campbell, his only catch of the game, but had a 50-something yard touchdown, and Carson Wentz threw a very pretty deep ball to Paris Campbell on a post route, so that was good to see. He threw a nice ball to Mo Alley Cox in the end zone. That was like a 20-30 yard pass. Had some nice passes to T.Y. Hilton as well. So Carson Wentz, while he hasn't looked sharp the entire season, has not looked that bad either. Like I think Carson Wentz has played maybe better than expected overall. I think a lot of people were kind of out on Carson Wentz this year, but I think Carson Wentz has been proving people wrong so far. We'll see if it gets them in the playoffs or not, but I guess, being 2-4, there's a lot of ground to make up here if you're the Colts, but Carson Wentz has been a pretty, not a bad spot. I would say more of a bright spot for the Colts so far. So I talked about Paris Campbell, Mo Alley Cox. Now T.Y. Hilton came back. I think T.Y. Hilton had like a neck injury, and we know that T.Y. Hilton always kills the Texans. It's just for some reason he always performs very well against the Texans. Came back, had 80 yards in this game, but T.Y. Hilton actually left the game with another injury. I think he might be out again, so we'll see what the severity is there, but that sucks for him. He's kind of probably in his early 30s now, so feel bad for T.Y. Hilton. Hopefully it's not too serious. Jonathan Taylor, the Colts running back, I expected him to have a huge game in this one, and the first half he did nothing. Like I was facing him in fantasy football, and the guy had 2 points at halftime, and I'm like, okay, let's keep that up, please. And then all of a sudden he finished with 28 points. So Jonathan Taylor had a monster second half in this game, had like a 90-yard run, capped it off with a rushing touchdown of his own once again. And I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns, 140, 150-something rushing yards, so he was awesome. Darius Leonard, the Colts linebacker, had an interception in this game. Now, as for the Texans, they released Whitney Merciless today, one of their edge rushers who's been there for a while. And I also saw today that they signed a linebacker, Zach Cunningham, who's been there, I don't know, for maybe 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And he's had some really good seasons for the Texans. They signed him to a big contract. And I just saw a tweet that Zach Cunningham is playing like 43% of snaps for the Texans, which is very puzzling. Like, I don't know what the problem with Zach Cunningham is. I'm not going to act like I watch every single defensive snap of the Texans, but for some reason he's kind of out of the rotation right now, and he's on a big contract, so it's a very weird circumstance. It kind of reminds me of the trajectory of Alec Ogletree's career, how he started off so well playing with the Rams, had a bunch of tackles every year, then all of a sudden got phased out, then of course went to the Giants, and his career kind of fell off, but it's kind of like that trajectory of a career so far for Zach Cunningham. It really makes no sense. He's still 26 years old, too, so it was very odd to see that. Quite a letdown for Houston. They almost, upset New England last week, and then they come back here and score 3 points in an entire game. So, the Colts handled their business, but obviously the Texans expected better. Brandon Cooks had a nice game offensively. I think Mark Ingram had 70-something rushing yards. Davis Mills had a couple interceptions. Obviously not that great. Laramie Tunsil, their left tackle's on the IR now. So the Texans are not going... They're not going well. They're going south, of course. So kind of as expected here. The Colts go to 2-4. They needed that win, and they got it. We'll see what they do the rest of the year. But as for the Texans, things probably aren't getting better, and they'll have one of the top picks in the draft coming up next year. Next, we have the LA Rams. They were at the New York Giants, a game that I wish I hadn't watched. So somehow this game closed as the Rams only favored by 7.5, which I did not understand. I'm not a person that bets against the Giants because I do want to root for the Giants. I don't want to root against them. So I don't bet opposite teams of the Giants, but if I was like a different fan, I would have hammered that. Like, I did not see a reason the Giants would even be that close in this game. But anyway, yeah, the final score was 38-11. The Giants collapsed in the second quarter. The Giants actually played pretty well in the first quarter. It was 3-0 Giants at the end of the first quarter, and things were looking okay. They could have capitalized more on offense. They kind of missed out on an opportunity in the red zone, settled for 3. But the Giants just fell apart in the second quarter. I think the Rams went on a 28-0 run in the second quarter. They went up 28-3 at halftime. Of course, we knew it was over at that point. The Giants lost their left tackle, Andrew Thomas. We'll see how long he's out for. Kadarius Toney, their first-round wide receiver, who was off to a great start, he was out with an ankle injury, after the first drive or two in this game. So rough game for the Giants, and Daniel Jones, who had looked pretty good up until this point, had his worst game of the year. I don't know why Joe Judge played him the entire game. It makes no sense as a Giants fan. It's like, Daniel Jones has the chance to be the franchise quarterback of this team, and Joe Judge left him out there when the Giants were down like 38-3. It made no sense. But anyway, especially with the way Daniel Jones was walking off the field last week at Dallas, we saw him all woozy and had the concussions. So I don't know why Joe Judge did it. Of course, he gives us that like, oh, my team's going to play 60 minutes nonsense. But here I am getting worked up about the Giants when I didn't want to. But anyway, Cooper Kupp had a massive game in this one. No surprise there. The Giants don't have a slot corner that's really worth giving a crap about. Matthew Stafford had a couple interceptions, but looked really good overall. Was given a lot of time to throw. But yeah, I mean, the Giants stink. That's really no surprise, of course. I didn't expect them to be this bad, but they're bad. And the Rams, as I said before, they're going to play the Detroit Lions next week, and we'll see what type of revenge Matthew Stafford gets coming up here in week number 7. Next, we have the LA Chargers. They were at the Baltimore Ravens here. The Ravens were favored by either 2 or 3 in this game. I forget, honestly, but this was supposed to be one of the better games of the week, and it ended up being a blowout. So the Chargers lost this game 34-6. Obviously, the Ravens rushing attack had a big game in this one. The Chargers had, I think, maybe the worst rush defense in football coming into this game, and I probably should have realized that because I picked the Chargers to win, I'm not going to lie, and I kind of wanted to ignore that their run defense was terrible, but I was like, all right, the Chargers offense is rolling, they'll be fine, but they were not doing anything. So they scored, 49 the prior week against the Browns and scored 6 in this game. So it's, football is a very week-to-week thing. It's hard to understand sometimes, but I guess, going from the West Coast to the East Coast, maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. But the Ravens finally had a good game on defense. They have kind of not really been the Ravens of old. The Ravens have always been known for having a good defense, and it really hasn't been the same so far up until this game. And the Chargers are legit. They were one of the best offenses in football coming into this game. They still are, in my opinion, going forward. But what the Baltimore Ravens did on defense was awesome, of course. Now, I think that Lamar Jackson didn't have to do much in this game. I mean, of course, he added that rushing element. Didn't do a crazy amount as a passer, but a lot of it came down to the veteran running backs for the Ravens, surprisingly so. I think Le'Veon Bell had a rushing touchdown. Devontae Freeman had a rushing touchdown. Latavius Murray, who banged up his ankle, actually had a rushing touchdown. So all 3 of the veteran running backs had a rushing touchdown in this game. I saw that Mark Andrews had a receiving touchdown as well, and Mark Andrews has had a great season so far. So yeah, Brandon Staley, the Chargers coach, who we all know is very, very, very aggressive. He went for a couple of fourth downs where it was like something you would only see in Madden. There was one in the third quarter where it was 24-6. The Chargers were losing, of course. Now you're down 24-6. It is a 3-score. I can't do math. That would be a 3-score game, I believe. So yeah, 3-score game. And he decides to go for it on his own 19-yard line on 4th and 1. They threw a curl to, I think, Mike Williams or Jalen Guyton. I forget who it was. One of the receivers on the outside. He didn't get it. And they turned the ball over on their own 19-yard line. So, I mean, he kind of just went for it all there. I don't blame him. Like, obviously, the Chargers were not up for the task. And sometimes you got to just go for a 4th down and hope you get it and, hope that changes the momentum in the game. So I don't blame him, of course, but like that was a very risky call there. So yeah, I mean, Brandon Staley will probably continue to call games that way. That probably won't sway his opinion, but you don't see teams going for on their own 19 in the third quarter very often, I will say that. So nice bounce back from the Ravens for sure. I mean, their defense definitely needed that one. They're now 5-1, tied for the best record in the AFC. Actually, no, they're not tied, are they? Because I just saw the Bills lost, so I don't know if anyone else is 5-1. I forget now. No, I don't know. But anyway, they might have the best record in the AFC now that I'm thinking about it. So the Ravens may be alone there at 5-1. Of course, we have the Cardinals in the NFC that are 6-0, but they may be the only 5-1 team there in the AFC. So good for the Ravens. The Chargers fall to 4-2. They play the Patriots next week. Now, the Patriots beat the Chargers very badly last year with Cam Newton. They lost 45-0, I believe, to the Patriots. So I'm sure a lot of Chargers fans are hoping this is a different outcome this time because that was ugly. So we'll see what happens there. But Baltimore gets a big statement of victory. It doesn't matter what the injuries that they face. Baltimore always finds a way to win. They have a winning culture there, and they just find a way to get it done. So congrats to the Ravens on that win. Next, we have the Green Bay Packers. They were at the Chicago Bears. Rookie quarterback Justin Fields getting a taste of this matchup for the first time here. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is 22-5 now against the Bears or something crazy in his career. So, yeah, the game kind of went as I expected. I had the Packers winning by, I don't know what the score was, maybe like 7 to 10 points. They won this one 24-14, so not much of a surprise. I mean, Chicago's offense kind of did the usual. They leaned on the run game. They had two of their starting running backs out, of course. You know, David Montgomery, who was their week 1 starter, was out with a knee injury, and his backup, Damian Williams, had COVID. He's on the COVID list, so they had to go to a 6th-round rookie, Khalil Herbert, who actually played very well in this game. He had near 100 yards rushing, I believe, so he was good in this game. And honestly, I feel bad for Allen Robinson. I will say Allen Robinson has not played with the best quarterbacks in his career, from Blake Bortles to Chase Daniel to Nick Foles to Mitch Trubisky. He has not played with the best quarterbacks in his career. Not to say Justin Fields is not good, but obviously there's not a connection right now with Allen Robinson. And they showed one replay where Allen Robinson was running a post route and he was wide open running downfield, hand up asking for the ball, and he didn't get it. And it makes you feel for Allen Robinson because I think right now he's playing on the franchise tag. I'm sure he wants to get out of there. But he's had a good, he's been really good for his entire career. He tore his ACL 1 year back in 2017, but outside of that, has been a very good NFL receiver. So I feel bad for Allen Robinson not getting the numbers he's accustomed to. Maybe that'll change as time goes on, but not looking good for him so far. So Justin Fields and the Bears offense, they had a good first drive. They went like 80 yards. They got a touchdown with Khalil Herbert in the first drive. Then their offense kind of like shut down there, so it wasn't really, they had a lot of drives where they were stalling and it didn't work out for them, but they were good on the first drive, of course. Now, Aaron Rodgers scored a touchdown to go up 10 in this game, and a lot of Bears fans were in the crowd flipping him off. That's at least what he said. And Aaron Rodgers had that awesome thing where he does like the belt and he says, "I own you" to the crowd. It was very cool. So if you haven't watched the Aaron Rodgers "I own you" thing, go back and watch that. The Bears are now back to 500. They're 3-3. The Packers have won 5 straight after their Week 1 embarrassing loss to the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the Packers are legit. Matt LaFleur has an awesome record in his regular season career. They got to get it done in the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl, but so far the Packers are off to a great start. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals. They were on the road at the Cleveland Browns, and Arizona, they won by a lot, 37-14. Not what most people expected, myself included. The Cardinals did not have a head coach. Cliff Kingsbury had COVID. He was out. They had a defensive end in Zach Allen who was out. He's a good player. Their center Rodney Hudson was out. So I know the Browns are injured, but the Cardinals had injuries of their own, and the Cardinals now remain undefeated. So they have been off to such a tremendous start here. I'm a Cardinals believer, but even I did not expect 6-0. Like that's such a good start for that team in the toughest division of football, by the way. Yes, the Seahawks are kind of falling off because of no Russell Wilson. Yes, the Niners have not been off to a great start so far, but the NFC West coming into this year, talent-wise, was the best division of football. So seeing a team 6-0 and that team being the Arizona Cardinals is pretty surprising, honestly. So the Browns had no Nick Chubb, no Jarvis Landry. They had injuries in this game to Baker Mayfield, whose left shoulder continues to get re-injured. He has I think a labrum injury in his left shoulder. Obviously he's a righty, so it's not his throwing shoulder, but still probably very painful by the way it looks. He was down on the ground at one point, got back up and came back in. But Odell Beckham had an injury. I forget what it was now. Honestly, I forget what the injury was, but he came back in the game. There was also an injury for Kareem Hunt, who hurt his calf. I think he might go on the IR, they said, and the Browns play Thursday, so that's a quick turnaround. And there was also an injury to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's the second-round linebacker for the Browns out of Notre Dame, who's been off to a great start this year, so that was very unfortunate to see that as well. So a lot of injuries here for the Browns, especially playing on that short week here on Thursday. Not good for them. But as for the Cardinals, their offense was clicking. Christian Kirk scored a touchdown, and DeAndre Hopkins. James Conner had a pretty nice game on the ground, and Kyler Murray had 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. So Kyler's one of the MVP candidates in football right now, and the Cardinals are the only undefeated team in football. They keep it rolling here. Even without their head coach, it does not matter. The Cardinals are legit, and I think they're Super Bowl contenders. We'll see how the rest of the year goes, and Kyler's got to stay healthy, but so far things are looking great for Arizona. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. They were at the Denver Broncos. Definitely a big game for Las Vegas, having dropped 2 in a row and the whole John Gruden thing going on. Their interim head coach here, Rick Bisaccia, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I have not heard his name yet, honestly, so forgive me there, but he's off to a 1-0 start as Las Vegas gets the win here. I think I picked Denver to win. I was not really expecting Las Vegas to come out and have this great of a performance. Guys like Henry Ruggs got very involved in the offense, and even Kenyon Drake, who's been quiet for a couple weeks in a row here, he came out, had a big game. I think Bryan Edwards had a big catch in this game as well. So Derek Carr was awesome in this one. Max Crosby had 3 sacks for the Raiders defense, and he's played very well this entire year. The Broncos offense was pretty quiet to start out the game. They finally came alive in the second half. In the fourth quarter, they had a touchdown to Cortland Sutton. They had a touchdown to Tim Patrick, but too little too late for the Broncos offense. And Teddy Bridgewater was sacked 5 times. He had 3 interceptions. And, Teddy looked great the first 3 weeks. I don't know what happened. Ever since the concussion, he has not been right. Not saying that's the excuse for why he hasn't been playing well, but just it seems like since that moment, things have not gone his way. So we'll see if Denver can fix things. Once again, it's a quick turnaround. They play Cleveland on Thursday. We'll see if the Broncos can fix it. And as for the Raiders, they get a big win here. They now go to 4-2. We'll see if they can build off of that. I forget who they play next week, but it's definitely good for them to get this win, get the whole John Gruden thing behind them, and look forward here and try to improve off 4-2. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the New England Patriots. One of the better games of the week, honestly. It was the 4:25 slot, I believe, and it was a really fun game. So Dallas They shot themselves in the foot multiple times in this game, whether it was Mike McCarthy being an incompetent coach and having the worst game managing skills there is, or Dak Prescott fumbling on the goal line, or Dak Prescott throwing a red zone interception. It seemed like Dallas did everything in their power to try and lose the game at some points, but they kept finding a way to get the ball back and putting up points, whether it was Greg Zuerlein tying the game with a field goal or Dak Prescott throwing a nice ball to CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb was awesome in this game, by the way. CeeDee Lamb had 9 catches, 149 yards, and 2 touchdowns, had a monster second half with 2 touchdowns in the second half, including the game winner in overtime. So, the Cowboys had a very impressive mini drive at the end there. It was a 4th and 5, I believe, and Cedric Wilson had a nice catch to keep the game and keep the drive alive. Got them in field goal range. It was a pretty long field goal, somewhere around 50 yards, and Greg Zuerlein tied the game, sent it to overtime, I believe. So Dallas got the win. They just escaped there in this one, of course, but, Mac Jones and the Patriots offense, it wasn't dominant, but they were good enough, and there was a time in this game where Trayvon Diggs had a pick 6 in this one, of course, the former teammate of Mac Jones, funny enough, and there's a lot of talk about Trayvon Diggs, a lot of people that hate on him and say he's given up so many yards, and I get it, but when you have 7 interceptions in 6 games, I'm not going to sit here and criticize you. That's freaking phenomenal. If you can turn a guy over, if you can get a turnover every game for your team, you're doing something right. You know what I mean? So I'm really, I guess, happy for Trayvon Diggs and the success he's had so far. I think a lot of people are just looking at it the wrong way. We're not saying he's the best cornerback in football. Maybe some Cowboys fans think that, but I think any logical person will tell you that Trayvon Diggs is probably not even in the top 5, not even in the top 10. He might be in the top 15, I'll give you that, but I don't think anyone's saying Trayvon Diggs is the best cornerback in football. I've got to give the man his credit for the turnovers he's getting on defense, and his interception was tough. I think Mac Jones threw a ball outside of the outstretched arms of Kendrick Bourne, and it like hit off of Diggs' shoulder, and he had to bobble it a bit and made a catch. So he has really good ball skills, and not every cornerback has that. We've seen cornerbacks drop very easy interceptions, of course, over the years here in the NFL, so I'll give him credit. Mac Jones, for the most part, looked pretty good in this game. He was, getting hit a lot and kept getting up and standing in the pocket, making throws. He had the nice throw to Kendrick Bourne where, yes, the safety made a terrible angle on the play and flat out missed it, but still, I think overall Mac Jones had a pretty nice game in this one. He was finding guys over the middle of the field, which is what he's good at, so they were close to winning this one, but they do drop this one. The Patriots are now 2-4. Dallas continues to play well. They're now 5-1. They get their bye week. Dak Prescott has a calf strain, but I'm sure he'll be fine. He was in a boot, but they're not making it sound like it's serious, so we'll see what happens there with the Cowboys quarterback. But Dallas right now is sitting in a very good position at 5-1, and the second place team in the NFC East right now is 2-4. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks. They were at the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. This was the first Geno Smith start since 2017, I believe, when he started for the Giants and ruined Eli Manning's streak. And this game did not go the way Geno wanted it to. Not saying he was awful in this game, but definitely lost a crucial fumble in this game late. I think he might have lost 2 fumbles if I remember correctly, but TJ Watt made a big play in overtime, stripping the ball from Geno Smith, and I think it was Devin Bush who picked it up, and they ran it back and got in field goal range, and Chris Boswell kicked the game winner there for Pittsburgh and got them to 3-3. I think Pittsburgh's going into their bye, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but they're now 3-3. They started 1-3, winning 2 in a row, so definitely big there for Pittsburgh. Probably not the start they wanted, but definitely the best case scenario after going 1-3 to start the year. Now, as for Seattle, they're now 2-4. Not the best vibes there for that team. They hung close in a game here where they probably weren't supposed to win, but they had their chances, I guess you can say. Once again, the Pittsburgh offense, they weren't awful in this game, but there wasn't really any explosive plays. It was a lot of dump-offs to the usual suspects of Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris, but their offense is not really that impressive, but they're doing enough right now, and Pittsburgh's defense is playing at a high enough level where they can hold teams to a respectable amount of points, and as long as Pittsburgh's offense isn't awful, they should be okay. So we'll see what they do against better competition. I think if Russell Wilson plays this game, they probably win that game to Seattle, but unfortunately that's not the case right now. But this game kind of had a controversial ending in the fourth quarter. So DK Metcalf caught a pass and was running down the sideline, kind of on Pittsburgh's 20-yard line about. So they were in field goal range down 3, no timeouts left, and one of the Steelers defenders punched the ball back in bounds, and Freddie Swaim jumped on it, but he was inbounds. The clock kept running. There was no timeouts once again, and they spiked the ball with apparently like 1 second left. Now, the clock hit all zeros, so the entire crowd thought the game was over, but the refs huddled up and said, no, we'll give them 3 seconds, so they spiked it. Then they went to overtime on a Jason Myers game-tying field goal, and then, of course, Geno Smith fumbled in the end, and, game was over, and Chris Boswell hit the game winner for Pittsburgh. So it wasn't the best win in the world, but it was an exciting game for a prime time. And I guess if you're Pittsburgh, you'll take it, but you would kind of hope that you would handle a Seattle team that has an awful secondary, and having Geno Smith, you would hope that you would win by a bit more, but I guess a win's a win. They have time to regroup now, so we'll see what the Steelers are coming out of the bye. I don't have the most confidence in that team, but we'll see how they do. And as for Seattle, I don't know how much better things get here in this situation. They play once again in the toughest division in football. They're usually a good team because Russell Wilson's carried them for so many years, but unfortunately that probably won't be the case here until he comes back. Now, I do think Russell Wilson's probably going to be back sooner than later, but by the time he comes back, will they be in a position to make the playoffs? Probably not. They're 2-4 right now. I don't see him coming back for another 3-4 games at least. They might be 3-6 or 2-7 by the time he's back. So we'll find out when Russ is back, but so far it's not looking good for the Seahawks. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Tennessee Titans, and this was one of the best games of the week here, just finished up on Monday night. And Buffalo was favored by 6.5 or 7 points coming into this game, but they flat out lost the game as Tennessee won this one by 3 points, I believe, as I forget the score now. They won this one 34-31. So let's kind of fast forward to the end here and go over what happened. So the Bills had the ball on probably I would say the Titans like 3-yard line or 2-yard line. They were very close to scoring, but it was a 4th and 1. So they were 1 yard short of getting the first down. There was about 25, 30 seconds left in the game. So this was it. They decided to go for it. They could have kicked the field goal and went to overtime, of course, and kind of press their luck there with the coin toss, but Sean McDermott decides to go for it on 4th and 1 and tries to get the touchdown and win the game, which I don't blame him for, by the way. Like, if I'm a coach in that situation, you play to win. You don't play to tie and go to overtime. If you lose the coin toss, you're probably not stopping Derrick Henry, so, I mean, you might as well try and win the game right there. I don't blame him for that. I know a lot of people lost money on the Buffalo Bills in the betting world, but I feel like if you're coaching to win that game, he probably did the right thing. Maybe you disagree, I don't know, but I kind of like what McDermott did there. It just didn't work out. So they tried the quarterback sneak, and Jeffrey Simmons, the former first-round pick defensive lineman of the Titans, just blew up that entire play, and Josh Allen got no push whatsoever, and they got him short of the line to gain, and Tennessee got the very thrilling victory. Derrick Henry was unbelievable in this game, and honestly, with this performance on national TV, he probably puts himself in the MVP conversation. I think I saw that Derrick Henry's on pace for over 2,500 rushing yards, which is just crazy, and we have not seen a running back win the MVP since Adrian Peterson back in 2012, I believe it was, but if Derrick Henry puts up 2,500 scrimmage yards or more, and the Titans win the AFC South, which is very possible, I think Derrick Henry's going to be in the MVP conversation. Will he win it? I don't know. I feel like, people might side with the quarterbacks and go with Lamar or Kyler. We'll see how the year finishes out. But right now, Derrick Henry has his name in the MVP conversation. But the bad news for Tennessee is that they had a couple of pretty big injuries. Julio Jones came back from a hamstring injury, re-injured his hamstring in the 4th quarter, so he might be out for a few more weeks. Taylor Lewan, their really good left tackle who has battled injuries recently, he went down on a very scary play. He was moving his extremities, they said, but he was down on the ground, wasn't moving, but he gave a thumbs up as he left, so that was good to see, but just leaving on a stretcher was not what you want to see, of course, especially for your franchise left tackle, so hopefully he's okay going forward, but the Titans overall get a very thrilling victory here. A.J. Brown looked good on offense as well. Ryan Tannehill had a bad interception in the 1st quarter, but outside of that, played a pretty nice game, so Buffalo's offense, they did what they could. They put up a lot of points, of course. I think Cole Beasley had a good game in this one. Stephon Diggs was great. Their running backs didn't do much. I think Dawson Knox, the tight end, hurt his hand, so he might be out going forward. We'll see what the severity is there, but it was a great Monday night game, a big win there for Tennessee. And as for the Bills, they're still in a really good spot. The AFC East is not that competitive. They'll be fine as long as Josh Allen's healthy, but now they're 4-2, had a real chance of winning this game, but unfortunately came up a bit short here, so it's whatever. They'll be fine, honestly. I think that the Titans probably needed it more, and they both play in pretty easy divisions, so it's not like this loss will, kill the Bills. They'll be fine, so kill Bill. Anyways, so that'll do it for this video. I think I went over every game. I'll go back and look after this. Hopefully I did. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Leave in the comments your reactions to what you saw this week and some of the overreactions and what you expect going forward, and I'll talk to you guys next time.